To the senior officials of respective government agencies, ladies and gentlemen, Bulavanaka and Permanent Secretary Bulavanaka, a very good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here today to open the Regulators Workshop by the Ministry of Commerce, Trade, Tourism and Transport. So I thank you all kindly for your participation today. This workshop, ladies and gentlemen, is specifically targeted to all regulatory agencies. So each of you are here today for a very, very important reason. Now, regulatory agencies play a critical role in the standardization process, and especially now as the ministry leads the review and modernization of the legislation dealing with standardization. From the actual review consultations, we found that to have an effective legislation for standards setting to ensure consumer protection, to have experts as regulators and certain roles in the current Trade Standards and Quality Control Act need to be moved to relevant agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, you may ask, what are standards for? Now, when there is a standard setting body, why are regulators important? And let me start with a very simple example. When you wake up every morning, you check your watch or your alarm clock, and how do you know it's actually giving you the right time? When you go to the supermarket and buy a kilogram of sugar, how can you be sure that it's actually the right weight? You're able to determine the correctness of the time and the weight only because the watch, alarm clock and the scale actually comply with set benchmarks. And these benchmarks are referred to as standards. In technical terms, a standard is a technical document designed to be used as a guideline or a definition. And standards are a repeatable way of actually doing something. And the unique part of setting standards is that it is set by a cross-sectional group of stakeholders comprising of private sector, public sector, and consumer representative and civil society. At this point, I wish to clearly state that standards in itself are not laws. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the question of the role of the standard setting body, or in our case, the Department of National Trade Measurement and Standards. The standard setting body does exactly what the name suggests. It sets standards for all goods and services, and as a standards developer according to global best practices. The department should not be the agency enforcing the standard. The department is the national standards body of Fiji, and its main responsibility is to create Fijian standards to support economic policy and regulatory objectives. For example, in Australia, standards for electrical appliances are set by Standards Australia. The enforcement is done by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission or the State or Territory Department of Fair Trading. In Fiji's context, one of the most successful partnerships that we have actually forged is between the Department of National Trade Measurements and Standards and the Department of Energy. The Department of National Trade Measurement and Standards sets the minimum labeling and performance standards for refrigerators, whilst Department of Energy actually regulates. This partnership has worked well in the effective implementation of the actual standard. The Department of Energy has the technical expertise and know-how, and most importantly, the relevant responsibility. Today you will discuss and learn how standards can be used to assist your agency in undertaking its regulatory responsibilities. And I want to emphasize that regulation is a key responsibility for all governments. And your role is critical to actually ensure that every Fijian has access to quality goods and services, whether they are made in Fiji or actually imported. Where goods and services do not meet quality requirements, it is your duty to ensure that they are not sold within the marketplace. So it is upon you to protect your fellow citizens from potential harm that they may actually cause. And simply said, to make standards work for Fiji, we need a collective approach and a whole of government effort. We need all agencies to play their respective roles to ensure that consumers are protected and there is a level playing field for competition for the private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the ministry has completed the consultations of the review of the Trade Standards and Quality Control Act, and I believe a number of you have been part of the actual consultations, and this workshop is in fact a result of the one-on-one sessions. Today's workshop aims to take stock of your regulatory roles and functions and how these can complement the potential regulations or regulators' role that your agency may hold in the future. And we will together identify the skills requirements and the capacity gaps that may need to be filled in your roles as regulators. You may become inspectors. And these are roles of trained, professionally skilled officials. You must actually ensure integrity, consistency and transparency in carrying out your roles and responsibilities, and the ministry will ensure that you get ongoing substantial training focusing on standardization, process skills and other relevant areas of regulatory practice. I hope that today's discussions, ladies and gentlemen, will not only help everyone in identifying their role as regulators, but serve as a reminder on exactly how standards can assist you in carrying out your regulatory responsibilities. And I want to re-emphasize that standards represents consensus on a solution to a particular issue. And therefore standards implementation requires collaboration and agencies working together. And in this regard, I look forward to all the regulators present here today and those attending the session tomorrow, working closely with the ministry to pave the way forward for standardization in Fiji. Today's session is another important milestone in our journey to achieve the important goal, and will be part of a series of regular communications between the ministry and yourselves. And in return, I encourage you to engage with the department on a regular basis to ensure that we have a suite of Fijian standards that is relevant and effective to support the achievement of economic policy and regulatory objectives in Fiji. Now please remember, this is not just a session, it's actually very important. And if I could just remind you with how important it is for the consumer, it's even the bread that you buy in the morning that forms a part of standards. And that's telling every consumer in Fiji that there is somebody who's actually watching out for these things. So please treat it extremely seriously today and make sure there's a very good session between you and the ministry. So with those few words, it gives me great pleasure to open the Regulators Workshop on the review of the Trade Standards and Quality Control Act this morning. I wish you all a productive day. Thank you very much.